The Misfits by James Howe, a First Chapter Friday read aloud video with the Word Nerd. Today, as you listen, play along. Watch for the story quote that will appear on screen. Write it down, word by word, and then listen to the instructions given to you by your teacher. Stay all the way to the end to see if you've written it down correctly. Okay, I'm going to talk about this more in the video in just a second, but I want to give you a quick trigger and content warning. The characters in this book are in 7th grade and face some pretty awful bullying that includes name calling. Some really awful names. There are words in this book that I do not use in real life, words that I try to avoid. But sometimes when we read about an awful thing done to fictional people we come to know and care about, it can teach us how to be better humans in our real life. I believe that was the author's intention in writing it. So before you get all huffy about the word choice, think about the bigger lesson, and then read the dang book. Yours respectfully, your favorite word nerd. Hi, my name is Amanda Zieba. Welcome to my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd, and another First Chapter Friday video. This week I'm going to be reading to you from The Misfits by James Howe. Now, you could read this book any time of year, and if you find this video, in November or May, awesome, great. But if I got to pick, I would have you read this book at the beginning of the school year, and the reason is that it gets in the mind of the reader and it changes some things up there. It gets you to consider things perhaps from a different perspective that you might not have considered before and change things, hopefully, for the better. The topic of this book is name calling, and not the good kind. I will be very honest and say to you that there are words in this book that I do not use in my real life. There are words in this book that I cringe when I hear them in my real life, and maybe even like pass extreme judgment on the person who is using them because they are unkind, they are mean, um and they're real bad. They're real bad. So teachers, as you're reading aloud, you might just need to give your class a little warning, like, we're going to say some stuff here, or maybe you choose to skip over saying them out loud. However, I am including this book on this channel, and it is an important book and a good book for people to read because it shows you the power that those names have. And we're not talking about good power, we're talking about bad power. And sometimes, in order to change our mind and to change the way that we act and behave, we need to see a real bad example of that. I think like about my kids. And when we're at the grocery store, this is when they're little. They're not little anymore, but like you're at a store and you see someone throwing a huge old fit, it is way more impactful for me to say, look at that. Like, that's what you look like sometimes too. You want to look like that? And when you see it from the outside looking in, it's much clearer that whatever is happening is inappropriate and it needs to change. And so, by looking at name calling through the lenses of fictional characters we get to know and love and want good things for, it can then trickle over into our real life, which is my most favorite thing about books, is that through fiction, we can make positive impacts and changes in our own lives. So I'm going to get off my soapbox about all of that. I'm going to read you the back of the book, and then I'm going to read you chapter 1. And then I would highly, highly encourage you, despite all of the bad words you're going to see in this book, read it. Here we go. Bobby is the quiet one, the chubby one, the kid who just wants to get through 7th grade unseen and unscathed. He hates the names he's called, but he figures there's nothing he can do about it. Until Addie comes up with a plan. Will her campaign to end name calling at Paintbrush Falls Middle School change anything? One thing is for sure, it will change Bobby forever. The Misfits, Chapter 1, by James Howe. So here I am, not a half hour old as a tie salesman and trying to look like I know what I'm doing, which have got to be two of the biggest jokes of all time. When who should walk into Ackworth and Ames department store but Skeezie Tookis. Now, ordinarily, I would be happy to see Skeezie. Do not get me wrong. In my book, he is a fine fellow, although I have heard him on more than one occasion referred to as that young hooligan. I suspect this may have to do with his fondness for black leather jackets and slicked back hair, combined with a certain carelessness in the area of personal hygiene and what I guess you might call a direct manner of speaking, even to those of a more advanced generation. But all I can say is that if you're willing to dig below the surface, you will discover the real Skeezie Tookis, and there you will find a heart as big as was ever produced by the little town of Paintbrush Falls, New York. If I seem to be going on at some length to defend a character you have just barely met, remember, I myself have only just glimpsed him coming toward me through the ladies' wear and accessories, batting at the rows of white cotton nightgowns with hands that look like they may have spent the previous 20 minutes digging a nickel out of a recently tarred road. If, as I say, I'm defending him before you've even met him, it is because of the look on my boss's face as he, too, beholds Skeezie's approach. The manager of the men's wear and accessories department is a Mr. Kellerman, although I have already learned that employees under a certain age referred to him as Killer Man. Apparently, he only smiles in private, if then, and he certainly isn't smiling on this particular Friday afternoon. It is highly irregular, he told me right off the bat when I showed up for work after school, to hire a 12-year-old as a tie salesman. Yes, sir, I said, trying to hide my light under a bushel, as my father had that morning advised me. He told me it might not pay off to show off how smart I am. Well, I may be smart, but I did not get what a light and a bushel had to do with each other, or anything at all for that matter. But at this moment, that was beside the point. I suspect it still is. Stock boy. Fine, Killer Man went on, polishing his glasses with a fine silk handkerchief he'd pulled out of his pocket of his gray flannel blazer. It is only September and it is still hot in Paintbrush Falls, even if we are pretty far north, but Killer Man has decided, I guess, that the season dictates gray flannel. I worked as a stock boy over the summer, I told him. I am aware of that, Killer Man said. In the lawn furniture and garden department. Yes, it is on your record. He snapped his silk handkerchief in my direction and then shoved it back in his pocket with, there's no other word for it, panache. You have to hand it to the guy. He has style, even if he has the personality of a doorstop. Well, he said, sighing dramatically, it seems that I am stuck with you. Only 2 afternoons a week, I pointed out, and occasionally on Saturdays. I shall remember to count my blessings, he said. Yes, sir, I said. So Killer Man hasn't taken his eyes off me the whole half hour I've been standing here trying to look like I know what I'm doing, although in point of fact I have been doing zip when comes along, of all people, Skeezie Tookis, on whom Killer Man is now getting ready to move in. And he doesn't even know yet the young hooligan is my friend. And all I'm thinking is once he does, I'm done for. I'll be canned before I box my first tie, and I don't even want to think about what my father will have to say about it. I decide to head off trouble at the pass. I make my move. Excuse me, Mr. Kellerman, I say. I think I see a customer who needs my assistance. If you are referring to that young hooligan, Killer Man says, you could chip ice off the words. Security will take care of him. Don't waste your time. Oh, it's not a waste of my time, Mr. Kellerman, I say. Then, remembering something I read in the 6 stapled pages Ackworth and Ames gives its new employees, I add, a customer waiting for assistance is a friend waiting to be made. Killer Man grimaces, but there's not a whole lot he can say to that. I smile a bit smugly. I suspect some of my light is leaking out from under its bushel. What are you doing here? I hiss at Skeezie. I do not mean to be hostile, but with Killer Man hanging out behind me like a vulture in the wind, I've got to act fast. The question is, what are you doing here? Skeezie asks back. Geez, look at you, tie and all. He starts to finger my tie, but I don't let him. It's not mine, I tell him. If I get it dirty, I'll have to pay for it out of my salary. What kind of stinking rule is that? Skeezie retorts. Is that your boss over there, the Grim Reaper? I'm going to go right over there and tell him. What kind of stinking rule is that? I put my hand on Skeezie's chest. Don't, okay? I say I need this job. If my dad didn't used to work here, I wouldn't have this job, so do not mess it up for me. Do you hear me, what I'm telling you, Skeezie? Are you reading me loud and clear? With Skeezie, it is sometimes necessary to say things more than once. Yeah, fine, says Skeezie, I get it, but maybe I'll write a letter to Mr. Ackworth and Ames. You do that, I say. I'll bet Mr. Ackworth and Ames are dead, he goes, picking his teeth with a grubby fingernail. I mean, this store's like 1,000 years old, man. Who shops in here anyway? I do not have an answer for this. In my half hour as a junior tie salesman, I have not seen another living soul, except for Killer Man, who is questionably living and arguably without a soul. And now Skeezie Tookis, who is definitely not shopping, is here, except Maybe he's here for trouble. We stop talking for a minute, and I wonder when the Skeeze is going to get down to business and tell me the purpose of his visit. Killer Man harumphs in the background. So, what's up? I say at last. I gotta get back to work. Yeah, that boss of yours is burning holes in your shirt with his eyes. I hope it's yours at least, otherwise you're gonna have to pay for the damaged goods out of your salary. Very amusing. So, I repeat, what's up? Skeezie puts a filthy hand on my shoulder, and I am glad the shirt I am wearing is in fact my own. Bobby, he says, giving me that deep look he uses to hypnotize his victims when he's about to hit them up for something. Only this time he isn't hitting me up for anything other than my attention. Bobby, he says again, what day of the week is it? Friday, I give back. And what happens Fridays after school? I go to work at Ackworth and Ames department store. As of when? As of today. And what, may I ask? About the forum? The forum? I ask stupidly because I know exactly what he is speaking of. Skeezie squeezes his eyes tight and nods his head back and forth like he's in pain or something. Only I know it isn't pain because I know this look of his, and what it is he's telling you how disappointed he is in you. Like you've done something terrible that has just put a dent in the perfect silver goblet that is his life. Bobby, 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 he croons, his eyes still squeezed up tight as if there's a whole pan of frying onions right there in front of him. Listen, I tell him, I gotta go. I'm sorry about the forum. Maybe we can do it another day. Skeezie's eyes pop open like his head is a car that's just been rear-ended. Another day? Did I hear you right? What about tradition, my man? I got two people sitting down the street at the Candy Kitchen sitting in our booth. Bobster's the back booth with the torn red leatherette upholstery. They have sent me here as their emissary because we cannot begin the forum until all are present and accounted for. And you are telling me another day? Mr. Goodspeed, I hear behind me. It is the voice of an executioner. Really, I gotta go, I tell Skeezie. Skeezie removes his hand from my shoulder and brushes it off on his jeans, like he just picked up some germs or something from my clean shirt, and says, You can't let us down, man. And I say, I don't get out of work until 5. Tell Addie and Joe I'm sorry. Maybe I can get my days switched here, and next Friday. Skeezie just walks away, shaking his head. Killer Man harumphs again and stays behind my back. Perhaps next Friday you will no longer be working here at all, Mr. Goodspeed. And I think, how come life always has to be so complicated? Will it get any easier when I'm an adult? And then my dad's life comes to mind and I think, no way. A few minutes later, I'm watching Killer Man from out of the corner of my eye, and he's standing there tapping his foot and checking his watch, waiting. I figure for a customer to show up or for the day to end, and I'm guessing his life isn't complicated at all. But I'm also guessing that he isn't happy. What Killer Man's life mostly comes down to, I figure, is waiting. All of a sudden, my mixed up pre-adolescent life seems pretty good. Even working as a tie salesman at Ackworth and Ames department store seems pretty good because I'm only 12 and I'm just passing through. Mr. Kellerman is stuck here for the rest of his life with his silk color coordinated ties and pocket handkerchiefs, waiting every day for a voice to announce, Shoppers, the store will be closing in 15 minutes. And when the store does close, where does he go? My mind draws a blank. Now, we've only just met two of the main characters, Bobby and Skeezie. There are two more, Joe and Addie, and you're going to love them. I love the voice in here. I love the word choice. These people feel real to me, and that's why you are going to hate what happens to them, and you're going to love what they do about it. So pick up a copy of The Misfits by James Howe. I'll put links for everything down in the video description box, but local indie bookstores, libraries, those are your first go-tos, and only Amazon if you can't find it anywhere else. So happy reading. Thanks so much for visiting my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd. I hope to see you here again next time for another First Chapter Friday video. To continue reading The Misfits by James Howe, pick up a copy from your school library, purchase one from your favorite local indie bookstore, or grab it via the Amazon link down in the video description box, or from my favorite local bookstore, Birdie's Bookstore.
Then be sure to check out the rest of the First Chapter Friday playlist. I've got more than 180 young adult and middle grade novels, graphic novels, novels in verse, and just plain amazing stories waiting there for you. This week's mystery quote says, "Sticks and stones may break our bones, but names will break our spirit." Thanks so much for visiting my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd. I hope you come back again for more First Chapter Fridays, Brain Break, direct teaching instruction videos, and more. I'll see you again next time. Happy reading.